Today I'm with Jonathan Brabrand, and he's an author, entrepreneur, and expert in the field of advising business owners on the sale of their companies. Kind of how did you get into this space? What made you want to do mergers and acquisitions? And let's just start there. Let's get to know, who you are and how you got into this space.
Absolutely. Great question. So I started in this industry right out of college. And admittedly, what drew me to it from the beginning was a little bit self-serving. It seemed like the opportunities that I was looking at, I went to University of Richmond and got a finance degree. The opportunities that I was looking at coming out of college for entry-level positions all seemed pretty boring and seemed like they had very little responsibility. And then I stumbled across investment banking analyst. And the more I learned about it and talked to the people like the year ahead of me and 2 years ahead of me and what they were actually doing, it just fascinated me that people that young would have that much responsibility and exposure to senior people. So I got into it because it seemed exciting and fun. And it has been, but that was, over 20 years ago. And the reason I've stayed in it is because I really like working with entrepreneurs and business owners. I love hearing their story. I love, getting to know their companies and ultimately helping them with sort of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
So you have a book out called The $100 Million Exit. So tell us a little bit about what's inside of that and like how you went about, like I said, you analyze large mergers and acquisitions. So
Yep.
what were some of the key lessons that you learned by analyzing the bigger deals?
Yeah, so I looked. The premise of the book is to, I think it's a pretty well known fact that large transactions, and we picked $100 million as sort of a template for what a large transaction might be in the eyes of many business owners. Large transactions, by their nature, get higher multiples. They sell for not just higher dollar prices, but a higher multiple of earnings. And some of that is based on pure size. But there's also aspects that I wanted to investigate to see if there's some things that could translate to business owners of any size. And that was sort of the premise of the book. And so I interviewed and drew from deal experiences that I've personally had to look at large transactions and what are some of the takeaways that that led to those higher value exits, and what could a regular ordinary business owner take from them. So the first 2 or 3 chapters are all about preparing and the idea of being in a sale ready posture, which I think is really important and is overlooked. And so that's the idea that you as a business owner, you should be ready to react to things from a sale perspective, even though a sale may not be in the cards at that moment. It may not be something you're actively pursuing.
When's the right time to start identifying, if you know you're going to build it to sell it or you're going to exit at some point, when is the right time to start identifying that end buyer? And uh, how do you identify them? Like,
Yeah, so 2 things there. The first one is it's going to sort of, I think, undermine the second part a little bit, but it's really hard to predict the ultimate single buyer. Now, we can certainly, I'm going to talk about ways to identify likely buyers, but in all the deals that I've worked on, it's rare that you could pinpoint with absolute certainty this is the group that will buy my company, and then run a large process, and that one group ends up at the end of the day. There's so many variables that can go into it. That being said, I think it's never too early to start that process, to answer your question. And so one of the ideas that we talk about in the book is identifying a handful of likely buyers, and that can come from in the industry, larger competitors, people in ancillary industries that you think, man, if I were partnered with them, we could do great things together. And so it's a little bit of a dream, a wish list of like who is like the best companies in my sector or in a related sector where I could see a lot of great fit. And if they had what I have and I had what they had, we could do great things together.
are there industries that you see like you would avoid, right? They're just notoriously hard to get deals done inside of.
So it goes a little bit back to the what makes businesses valuable, and to some degree, valuation is just tied to perceived risk. So the perceived risk in a business, the higher it is, the lower the price, the multiple that a buyer is willing to pay. There are transactions that probably can get done in any industry for the right price. The challenge is trying to make sure you don't get stuck into an industry where the multiples are low because the perceived risk is so high. And so, investors, buyers of both strategic or financial nature, are looking to minimize risk that is outside of, essentially their control.
What are the biggest mistakes people make when they're preparing for exit? So I'd love to get your insight on that.
Yeah, so one of them is waiting too long to sell. So if you think about the baseball analogy, you want to sell like in the seventh inning. You want to have some nice trajectory behind you, but you also want to have some pretty good opportunities ahead of you. The mistake business owners often make, and it ties back to that delaying what they feel like is some type of finale, is they just wait too long and they're in the extra innings. And the issue with that is, the business may plateau, or even start to decline a little bit. And business buyers are buying the future; they're not buying the past. So the fact that you had your best year 2 years ago is good for you, but not good for your next partner. And so they're really focused on what's the business going to do next year, the year after that, and into the future, either independently or in conjunction with what they bring to the table.
What do you
Yep.
see as a big difference between like somebody reaching out and just going to a brokerage, a Murphy's
Hmm.
brokerage or something like that, and actually
Yep.
working with what you would do as M&A advisory? Is there
Yep.
is there a clear difference between what those would be?
I think there is, and I think I have a lot of respect for business brokers, and I think they play a valuable role in the overall ecosystem. But the way that they work with clients and bring business, and ultimately we all sell businesses, but the way that they do it is different. And so, a business broker is typically working with smaller businesses that uh, uh, are more oftentimes looking for individual buyers. And so the approach that they take is typically similar to a real estate agent, where they will list a business without its name, but they will list it with an asking price and a little bit of information about it. And it's a little bit of the first come, first serve. The first buyer that has an interest that can be at or near that listing price will engage with them. And we've got lots of businesses listed, and tell me what you're looking for.
You've been doing this for 20 years. Is there anything you know now that you wish you'd have known on day one of starting this whole process?
Um, I've seen a wide variety of businesses in all types of industries. I think the thing that gets overlooked the most often is the quality of the management team makes a big, big difference. And it's not just the owner, but it's that second tier senior management leadership that can make a real difference in the multiple and on the depth of buyers that are interested in your company. And I recognize it's hard as a small business owner to hire. They're typically the most well compensated folks in the organization. It's hard to make those hires. Sometimes they don't work out, but really focusing on your direct reports and finding the best individuals that you can for those roles will pay dividends when it comes time to exit. And being able to show a team that's capable and exceptional and has a plan, as you were talking about earlier in your example. Another mistake I see business owners make is poor positioning when they go to sell their business. And what I mean by that is defining the landscape in which your business operates more broadly than you might think is really valuable. And so, your pest control business could be a pest control business, but it also could be the first leg of a multi-leg home services business where there are all these other tie-ins. And whether you've done any of the other ones or not, defining what your business is more broadly than what it actually does today helps to plant that seed in the buyer's mind of this is something bigger than just a local pest control company. It attracts more buyers that maybe weren't looking for that, but are looking for a multi-service, home services business, and this could be one element of it. And it helps show them that you've got bigger growth opportunities ahead of you than just simply adding on more of the same.
It's one of the favorite things I like to do is say, what should I have asked? What did it, what, you know, is there anything that's come up in this conversation that you're like, hey, we probably should talk about that? The world needs to know it. Or, I mean, is there a question that we're skipping over here that I failed to ask you?
The one thing that maybe would be good to end on is part of the reason I wrote the book, part of the reason that people like me still have a job is that I think business owners have a lot of misconceptions about exiting their business, and they fall into two polar opposite camps. And I just want to really quickly demystify or debunk both of them. One end of the spectrum says, man, selling my business will be very easy. I don't have to worry about it. When the time comes, the right buyer will fall in my lap. I don't have to do any preparation for it. I'm not going to think about it until the day I want to retire, and I'll just sell it like a house. Maybe it takes 60 days. The answer is it takes 6 to 9 months.